Hey guys, this is Mr. Grice for Algebra 1, Chapter 10.4, Notes. Today we're talking about graphing quadratic functions by using Vertex and X-Intercept. Our learning target today is to be able to graph a quadratic function by using the vertex, axis of symmetry, and X-Intercepts. Now, before we begin, let's review the quadratic equation, okay? And that is, the form is normally y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And the key thing to know about these two guys is that right here, this ax squared, that is your quadratic term. Okay, that's the quadratic term because there's a square on it. Okay? Now, before we start talking about all of these things, we got a lot of definitions, by the way. So the first thing to remember is a parabola. A parabola is the U-shaped graph of a quadratic equation. Right? It's the U-shaped graph of a quadratic equation. Now I'll flip back to that in a second if you need it. Okay? Now, for this right here, this graph, what are these solutions? Okay, the solutions are what x equals. Well, what does x equal? X equals 1, and x equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now, a difference thing is what are the x-intercepts? Okay, and those are points. So, what are the points for this? Okay, that would be 1, 0, and 5, 0. Okay, you need to know that the solution is referring to the point. All right, let's go back to the notes. We're going to go back to that a lot. So, now, if the quadratic term is positive, the parabola opens up, which means it's going to look like that. And if the quadratic term is negative, the parabola opens down. Okay, so let's come back to this right here. So if we have a positive ax squared, our parabola is going to open up. Okay, since it's positive, we'll go blue. Okay, now just think, what do positive people look like? Well, positive people are always smiling. Okay, so think of positive people. Okay, negative, so if it's got a negative ax squared, okay, negative people are always frowning and they're sad. Okay, all right, let's go back to some definitions. Now, the vertex is the highest or maximum or the lowest minimum point of a parabola. Okay, so it's either the highest or the lowest point. Now, let's take a look at the pictures that we just graphed. For a positive graph, which we have in the blue, is going to have a maximum or a minimum. So you're looking at the lowest point. Well, the lowest point right here, the vertex is the minimum, okay? The lowest point. I know it sounds funny because if it's a positive graph, the vertex is the minimum, okay? And when you're talking about a negative, right there, the highest point, the vertex is a max. Okay, it's the highest that it can get. Okay, and this where it helps to actually draw the picture, because if you can actually see it, is it the top or is it at the bottom? And that's going to help you out a lot. Okay. All right, let's go back to our definitions. Now, the next thing we need to know is the vertex. To find the vertex, there's an equation. Now, it's a lot easier than the quadratic formula. Okay, it's the opposite of b, all divided by 2 times a. Okay, and all that's going to do is going to give you 1 point. Okay, that's going to tell you what the x is. Okay, so the vertex, remember that the vertex is a point. Okay, you need an x and a y. So when you're finding it, then you're going to substitute that value into the equation. And we'll go through some examples to find the y. Okay? Now, some other terms that you need to know is the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is a vertical line that passes through the vertex and cuts the parabola into 2 symmetrical halves. Okay? Think of the word axis. Axis we've talked about. Axis is a fancy word for line. And symmetry is, you think, mirror image. Okay? So when we're talking about the axis of symmetry, it's going to go through your vertex and it cuts your parabola in half. And see how the 2 sides, okay, my blue side and my orange side, they're the exact same. Okay, that's the axis of symmetry. Okay, and the equation of the axis of symmetry is whatever the value of the vertex is. Okay, now I know we're going through a lot of vocabulary. It's very important that you know all of this. Okay, we're going to refer to these a lot, so keep these notes handy. All right, let's move on down. Now, identify the following characteristics of each quadratic. So, for number 1, does it open up or down? And for that, we need to look at the quadratic term. Well, what's the quadratic term? Well, I don't know, because that's not in order. So let's rewrite it. So y equals, there's my quadratic term, negative 3x squared plus 6x plus 7. Okay, so looking at our quadratic term, which is right there, is it going to open up or down? Well, it's a negative, so that means it's going to open down. Okay, that's what it's going to look like. Now, is it going to have a minimum or a maximum value? Okay, that's why we draw the picture right there. It's going to have a max. That vertex is going to be all the way at the top. And now the last part is, what is the vertex? Okay, and that's where you need to know what A, B, and C are. And off to the side, if you need to write A equals negative 3, B equals 6, and C equals 7, that's okay. All right, the formula is x equals the opposite of b, all divided by 2 times a. So x equals negative b, so that's negative 6 over 2 times negative 3. And that gives us x equals negative 6 over negative 6, which equals negative 1. That's just our x, okay? And now we have to plug that into the original equation. So y equals negative 3 squared plus 6 plus 7. So we're going to take our answer right here and we're going to plug it in. Okay? And now this you guys should be able to do. Okay, negative 1 squared is 1. So you got negative 3 times 1 plus negative 6 plus 7. Oh, I'm sorry, that's, yeah, we should get negative 3. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. What am I talking about? That's a positive 1, because negative 6 divided by negative 6. Durr, Mr. Grice. I was looking at my answer. It's like, why is this wrong? Okay. Watch your signs. So negative 3 plus 6 plus 7. And when you add all that stuff up, you get 10. So my vertex, what we're trying to find is the point 1, 10. Okay? Vertex is always, always, always a point. Okay? Now, does this open up or down? I might go, whoa, Mr. Grice, this isn't, what's wrong with this one? Okay, well, let's rewrite it. Y equals x squared, because it's missing the middle term, minus 2. But so does this go up or down? Well, it goes up because of this term. It's positive. Okay? So it's a positive graph, which means it opens up. And is it going to have a minimum or a maximum down there? Okay, that's minimum because of the bottom. Okay, so now when we're doing our vertex, we know that A is 1, B is 0, and C is negative 2. So x equals the opposite of B. Well, that's 0 over 2 times. Oh, well, 0 divided by anything is just going to be 0, right? That's what we want. Okay, so we know it's 0. And now I'm going to plug that into the original equation. Y equals 0 squared minus 2. Okay, I'm using the original equation. So y equals negative 2. So our final answer over here, what is the vertex? Well, the vertex is 0, comma 2. Okay? Oh, negative 2. Need my signs today, guys. All right, now let's actually graph this. So we're going to graph the quadratic function by using the vertex, axis of symmetry, and the x-intercepts. So the first thing you want to ask yourself, is this going to go up or down? So looking at this, we're going to have a positive graph. It's going to look something like that. If your graph doesn't look like that, you did something wrong. Okay? So let's find the vertex. Off to the side, A is 1, B is 10, C is 24. So x equals the opposite of B over 2 times A. So x equals negative 10 over 2 times 1. So x equals negative 10 over 2. X equals negative 5. Okay, and now we need to plug it into y equals negative 5 squared plus 10 times negative 5 plus 24. And when you do each of that, it's 25 minus 50 plus 24. You can plug all that into the calculator if you need to. You get -1. So our vertex is -5, -1. So I'm actually going to graph that. -5, -1 in quadrant number 3. Okay? Now, the next thing it's asking for is the axis of symmetry. And if you look at the definition of the axis of symmetry, all that is a vertical line that passes through the vertex. So to find the equation, I just need to know what x is, and x is -5. Now, when you graph the vertex, all it is a dashed line. Okay? That's all we need to know. And now we need to find the x-intercepts. Well, how do we do that? This is why we did all of our factoring. Okay? Your solutions. So y equals 10x plus 24. When this is set equal to 0, we can find out our answers. Like, well, Mr. Grice, it's not set equal to 0. Now it is. Okay? And now this is all what we did earlier in the section. All right? We know that A is 1, B is 10, C is 24. I need the numbers, the factors of 24, which are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Which numbers add up to get to 10 will multiply to get to 24. Did you find the set? Okay, should be 4 and 6. Okay, we break that up. X squared plus 4x plus 6x plus 24. Guys, I'm going to do this super fast because you should already know how to do this. And if you don't, you need to come see Miss Carranza or myself to get help. Alright, so now that we've split that up, you set everything equal to 0. And that's where we get the solutions. X equals -4 and -6. Now the only thing is I want those as intercepts. Okay, so my intercepts are -6, 0 and -4, 0. So the last part that we're going to be doing right now is I'm going to graph -6, 0 and -4, 0. And now I'm going to draw my parabola. Okay? Now, when you draw a parabola, the key thing is I want it to be a U. Okay? This is not a V shape. That's a different type of graph. Okay? We want a U. That's a parabola. Okay? And if you see, the axis of symmetry kind of cuts everything in half. All right. Let's go ahead and flip it over. Now, on to the next side. What is A? What's A? What's B? What's C? A is -9, B is 18, C is -5. I need to find the vertex. So, that's the opposite of B over 2 times A. Okay? Which is -18 over -18, which gives us +1. Okay? Now, the next step is to plug that into the original equation. So y equals -9 times 1 squared plus 18 times 1 minus 5. Okay, that's -9 plus 18 minus 5. And when you plug all of that in, you should get a positive 4. So our vertex is the point 1, 4. Okay, so 1, 4. There we go. Quadrant 1. Okay, axis of symmetry, it's whatever your x value is. All right, so I'm going to draw my dashed line all the way down to represent my axis of symmetry. Now, the next portion of this is we need to find our x and y intercepts. All right, so I'm going to take our original equation, y equals negative 9x squared plus 18x minus 5. Now, as we're getting started, oh, we got a leading coefficient of a negative. We can't have that. All right, so I need to factor out a negative 1. So 0 equals negative 1, and then we're left with 9x squared minus 18x plus 5. Okay, so a equals 9, b equals negative 18, and c equals 5. So you can always do the quadratic equation if you want to find your solutions. Okay, or we can actually go through and factor this out, because we get 45, which is 1 and 45, 3 and 15, 5 and 9. Is there a group that adds up to negative 18 and multiplies to get to positive 45? There is. And that's 3 and 15. The only thing is, they're both negative. Okay? I'm going to let you guys go through and factor the rest of this out, because you guys should be able to do that. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and factor it out. Okay, after you factor it out, you should have gotten 3x minus 5 and 3x minus 1. Now, anything with an x, you set equal to 0. So you should have remembered to take that negative 1 and bring it down. Okay? The negative 1 doesn't have an x, so I don't have to set it equal to 0. But now, each of those you would go through and solve by adding the 5. So 3x equals 5. And then dividing. You do the same thing over here. 3x equals 1, x equals 1/3. Okay? So my solutions we have are 1/3 x and 5/3 for x. I'd be like, whoa, Mr. Grice, what the heck are those numbers? I would write those numbers down, so what they equal. 0.3 and 1.6. You should know that, because when you graph them, which is the last part over here, you need to know where those are in the graph. Okay, so 0.3 is right around there, and 1.6 right around there. And remember, when you're drawing this, it's a U. Okay, and this graph goes on forever. That's why you have to have those lines there. Okay. All right. Now, the last one, we're just going to do part of this. Okay. Now, let's find the vertex. All right. We know that A is 1, B is negative 5, and C is 4. Okay. The vertex for this, when we plug it in, x equals the opposite of b over 2 times 1. We'll be like, yo, Mr. Grice, x equals 5 over 2? Yeah, that's fine. We can have that. Okay. Oh, let's rewrite that a little bit. So 5 over 2, that's fine. Now find the next one, okay? Y equals 5 over 2 squared minus 5 times 5 over 2 plus 4. Guys, it's okay. You can use your calculator for this. You'll figure it out, okay? And when you get that, you should get y equals negative 9 over 4, okay? Mr. Grice, I have no idea where those are. Use the decimals, silly. We get y equal, or x equals, I'm sorry, I'm mixing these up. 2.5 and negative 2.25. Okay, that's okay. And just do your best job when you're graphing. So it's 2.5 and negative 2.25. All right, do the best job that you can. And now when you're doing the rest of this, this is still just the axis, okay? It's whatever the x value is. And you keep doing the same thing, okay? Why don't you guys go ahead and try to find the x-intercepts, pause the video, factor it out, and let's see how you do. Okay, there's the work. There's my graph, and now as you can see, the axis of symmetry kind of goes between everything. Okay, it cuts everything in half, and that's a really bad line. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, now, if you have any questions, please come see Ms. Carranza or myself. Your homework is 10.4, the attached sheet. If you have any questions, please come find us. Otherwise, that's it for Algebra 1, Chapter 10.4 Notes, Day 1. Thanks for watching.